properly, I want to tell you a little bit about different types of chopsticks. So there are primarily 3 types of chopsticks: Japanese style, Chinese style, and Korean style. As you can see, they're distinctly different. So the main difference is that Japanese chopsticks have really fine tip compared to other chopsticks, which allows really fine work. You can cut in through with these chopsticks some soft ingredients such as tofu or fish meat. You can also grab small objects. So the characteristic of Chinese chopstick is that it's quite longer in compared to some Japanese chopsticks like this. It tends to be a little bit thicker, and also at the tip is also thicker. I think the reason for that is that in China you have like a big table. They usually eat in a big family, and then they have like plates all over, and then you share so you can reach further plates. The main characteristic of Korean chopstick is that it's made of metal and tends to be square and thin. Usually Japanese chopsticks are made of bamboo or wood, and a Chinese chopstick are made of wood or often plastic. And then Korean, it's made with metal. I'm not quite sure what the reason for that is. They also use often metal plates or metal bowls. I personally think Japanese chopstick are better, probably because I'm Japanese, I'm used to it. Because of its fine tip, then you can work finely. You can grab pretty much anything. Whereas with Chinese chopstick, for me it was quite difficult to grab noodles, and for Korean style, because it's made of metal, when you're eating something hot, then the tip gets so very hot, and for me it was a bit uncomfortable. I personally recommend using Japanese chopstick like this. Now I'm going to show you how to use chopstick properly. So before we go into that, there's actually a proper way of picking up chopsticks. So what you want to do is you want to, with your right hand, pick up the chopstick like this, and with your left hand you hold it from the bottom like this, and then you slide your right hand like this, and then it's ready to be used. And when you're finished, then you do exactly the reverse. You hold your chopstick like this, and then you slide over around, and then hold the top, and then place it back. Of course, you don't have to do this, but it's just kind of elegant way of using chopsticks. Now to hold the chopstick properly, you want to pick up one chopstick and then hold it just as you would hold a pencil or a pen, and hold it just about halfway. You actually move only the top chopstick. And then the second chopstick, you slide it through this hole, and then you hold with the bottom of the thumb and top part of the ring finger like this. You're going to hold the bottom chopstick like this. And this stays as it is, it doesn't move. And then you just move the top chopstick like this, and that's the proper way to hold chopstick. One of the most important things using a chopstick is that you have a very even tip. So if you have a tip like a slightly uneven like this, you could not work well. If you're struggling using chopstick, then you might want to make sure that you have a very even tip. Like, I wouldn't be able to eat anything if I were holding my chopstick like this. So have an even tip, and then you work only the top like this. If you want to practice using chopstick, then what we often do is you have 2 plates, and then you pick up the beans with your chopstick. That's something we do in elementary school. I think I remember doing it in like the 1st or 2nd grade. We had beans like this, and then what you do is you pick up the beans like this. Like this. So in the beginning, maybe it's a bit difficult, but once you get the hang of it, then it's actually not very difficult. Like this. If this is too difficult for you, you can start with bigger beans. It's difficult to hold like a very hard thing. It's much easier if you have like a very soft thing. I would maybe start with like a gummy bear. Those are very easy to hold, and then work your way up. And if you want to be very, very professional, then you can also pick up the rice grains. For the beginner, it might seem quite impossible, but once you get the hang of it, you can actually pick up the grain of rice like this. That is only if you want some challenge. And I would assume picking up rice grain is quite impossible if you have a Chinese style or Korean style chopstick. Now we're ready to go into the Japanese table manner. So for that, I need some kind of dishes here. So let's call them. Oh, only if life was that simple. But then again, if it was so simple, then nobody would watch my channel, so maybe it's a good thing that it's not. So before I go into tell the Japanese table manner, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the right positioning of different dishes. Sorry that there are so many manners and so many tradition and whatnot in Japanese culture, but hopefully that's what makes it interesting. So here's the proper Japanese table sitting. So first of all, we have the chopstick here with the pointing end facing that way, because most Japanese people are right-handed, so they can pick up the chopstick like this, I've seen some Westerns do put their chopstick like this or like this on the side, facing this way as they would put on fork or knives. That's wrong, so please always put chopstick like this. And then the most important part is, of course, the rice. Rice is on the left side so that you can pick up with your left hand like this, always on the left side towards you. And then next to that you have the miso soup or some other kind of soup, and that's always towards you on the right side. And then eat it with your chopstick like this. And the main dish is always away from you, like here. And if you have a meat, then there's no really particular order for that. But if you have a fish, the fish needs to be facing left, with the fish on that side. That's because of our writing system that we write from right to left, going that way. So the fish needs to swim on that direction as well. And then when you have other side dishes like this, then you have on the side like this. Now finally, let's get into the Japanese table manner. The first thing and the most important thing is that you say your hands together like this, itadakimasu. Itadakimasu means directly translated as let us eat, let us feast, but it is a non-religious prayer saying thank you very much for the food that I'm about to receive. So like I said, this is a non-religious prayer, meaning that I'm not thanking any gods or anything for the food, but instead I'm thanking all the lives that I'm receiving. So inside the Japanese philosophy or part of Buddhist philosophy, we don't differentiate the animals and the plants. They're all lives. And we are sinful beings that have to receive other lives in order to survive. As human beings, we accept that sin, but because we receive these lives, we try to make the world a little bit better place than it was before. So itadakimasu is not only saying let's eat, but it's a prayer for all the lives I'm about to receive, and also all the human work that is put in to make this possible. So someone had to catch the fish, someone was working on the farm for the rice and for all the vegetables, so there was a factory that was making tofu, there are people driving trucks to bring to the supermarket, and there are people working in the supermarket that sell these, that allow me to purchase these. And also this is saying thank you for the chef, well, in this case I cooked it, but still if someone else was cooking, then it's also saying thank you for cooking, thank you for raising the plants, thank you for catching the fish, so forth. So itadakimasu is a very short prayer saying thank you to all the food, all the lives that I'm about to receive, and all the work that is put into making this possible. So if you ever go to Japan, or if you ever go to a Japanese restaurant, I would ask you to bring your hands like this and say itadakimasu. And then at the very end, when I'm finished eating, I bring my hands like this and say gochisou sama deshita. Literally translated as it was a feast. And this is also at the end, thank you for the lives, thank you for the food, but primarily this goes actually to the chef who cooked it and saying thank you very much for this delicious meal. So in Japan, people say often when they leave a restaurant, gochisou sama deshita to the people who are working there or chef. If you can say it directly to the chef, gochisou sama deshita, then it means thank you, that was delicious. Hope you try that as well when you go to Japan. Second part of the Japanese table manner is probably similar in other cultures, but no putting your elbow on the table, nothing like this, you never eat like this, but also you don't want to cross your fingers when you're eating. That's just disrespectful for the food. If you ever have a chance to eat in Japan or go to a Japanese restaurant, try not to eat with your legs crossed. Always legs together, showing the respect to the lives, showing respect to the food. And third thing is not a must, but encouraged to pick up your rice bowl like this in your left hand. Well, if you're left-handed, then the other way around, but you're allowed to, or you're encouraged to pick up your rice bowl like this and eat it like so. That also applies to miso soup. So you're allowed to, or you're encouraged to, eat the miso soup like this and eat like this. And when you're holding a rice bowl or soup bowl, you're supposed to hold it like this. Sometimes when I'm in Western culture, I have to hold the bowl like this because they don't have this leg part. But when you go to Japan, all the bowls have leg, so you should hold it like this, not like this. This is not, of course, not taboo, but something that you want to care about when you're eating. And the fourth thing is that you're allowed to slurp, or maybe you're encouraged to slurp. And when you're eating in Japan or in a Japanese restaurant, we eat soup like this. And then when you drink the soup, you're allowed to, or you're encouraged to, slurp. If you don't want to, of course you don't have to, but in Japan know that people slurp, and then you can also slurp. And that's also the reason why we eat a miso soup with chopsticks. And when you're eating a noodle, you're also allowed to slurp. Know that that is possible, or you're encouraged to do so. But of course if you don't want to, you don't have to. And the last thing goes along with the philosophy of Japanese eating, Japanese culture, is that you don't want to leave any food behind. So when you go to a restaurant, try not to order so much and just order how much you can eat and finish up all the food. It's a bit rude for the chef. I see quite often in Western culture where they just throw away food without big thought on that. But please urge you to try to finish all the food that's on the table. And if you can't finish it, of course that happens. And if you're in a restaurant, then ask for the doggy bag. Most Japanese restaurants would have some kind of container where they can bring food at home. And so that way they don't have to waste it. Now let's talk about 8 taboos when you're using chopstick. So the first is a big taboo. You never ever want to do this when you're in Japan or in front of a Japanese person. And it is called tatebashi, meaning standing chopstick. So what it is sticking chopstick like this on a rice or any other dish, but usually on a rice like this. Never ever want to do this, because this looks like standing incense on a bowl of ashes, which you have in a Japanese funeral, and so you never ever want to do this. And the second taboo is also related to funeral, which is called watashibashi, and that is giving anything, whatever, from one person to another person using chopstick like this. Because this is something we do in a Japanese funeral. After you burn the body and the leftover ashes and the bones, we pass on the burned bones within the family and you put it in a vase. There's another part to that, which probably the most people don't ever do, but that is having 2 chopsticks like this, with 1 bamboo, 1 wood. But that's also how we do this ceremony in the Japanese funeral when they pass on the bones. So you want to make sure that you have the same chopstick, which you would normally anyway, but just so you know that that's also a taboo. And third taboo is not so bad, but it's just unrespectful. And that is called yubisashibashi, meaning pointing chopstick. So what you don't want to do is you want to point someone like this with a chopstick. Pointing at someone directly like this is also already considered in Japanese culture a bit rude, so you don't want to do that anyway. But especially with a chopstick like this or like this, pointing at someone or pointing at something is a little bit unrespectful, so try to avoid doing that. And the fourth is called yosebashi, meaning bringing close hashi. And that is when you have something, some plate, and then you move the plate with your chopstick like this. It's not so bad, but it just doesn't look good. So when you have to move a plate or a dish like this, and then just use your left hand like this. So fifth is called mayoibashi, meaning being lost chopstick. That's when you're undecided and you kind of go over around like this. Am I gonna eat this or this? So you don't want to do that. It's not wrong or it's not that bad, but just make a decision and then, okay, I'm gonna eat that, and next I'm gonna eat that. So just know. And sixth is called neburibashi, meaning licking chopstick. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to lick the chopstick. It's probably the same when you have a fork or a knife. You don't want to lick your fork or knife anyway. So the same thing that applies also to the chopstick. And the seventh is in some form allowed. It's not really that bad at all, but it just doesn't look so good, especially if you're an adult. And what it is called sashibashi, meaning sticking chopstick. And so that's when you stick something in your chopstick like this. If you're a child, it's allowed, because when you're a child, you can't use chopstick that well, and then you have to pick something with your sticking up your chopstick like this, especially if you have like tofu piece. And if you're a foreigner, they'll understand and they won't be so picky on that, but know that it doesn't look so good. So try to just pick anything with your chopstick like this, instead of sticking a chopstick like this and picking up in this form. And the last taboo is called watashibashi, meaning putting on chopstick. I actually didn't know this myself until I looked it up in order to make this video. That is when you put your chopstick like this over a plate or a bowl. And I actually didn't know that it was a good thing to do. So if you do it, it's okay. Not that big of a deal, but just know that it's kind of rather something that you want to avoid. I would say a lot of people don't know this either, because I've seen a lot of people put their chopstick